What's one thing a capitalist and a communist can agree upon? Welcome to Win-Wins of History, a series of uplifting stories where humanity managed to get its act together to break out of bad dynamics and solve a big problem. And for this week's example, we need to go back to the 1970s, at the height of the Cold War. This was when the US and the USSR were in this big race of global dominance. And given they were mostly racing over who could build the most nuclear weapons, it wasn't exactly an ideal situation. But on the upside of all this rivalry is that we got the space race, so all these big rockets and satellites and moon landings, which, yes, the moon landings I do think happened. And despite most of the politicians still continuing to be at loggerheads, the scientists working on space technologies realized that there might be an advantage if they actually started working together across international lines. That was until the 1970s came along. By then, the Vietnam War was winding down, and it seems like Americans had just generally had enough of conflict. They were looking for more peace. And perhaps that's why NASA Administrator Thomas Paine came up with a great idea. What if Soviet and American astronauts could meet for a handshake up in space? The astronaut equivalent of a big cuddle puddle. He then pitched his idea up the sort of government ladder, and clearly it caught on because eventually President Nixon and Soviet leader Brezhnev agreed, you know what, let's do it. And so the Apollo-Soyuz mission was born. Just 3 years later after that, the two capsules launched, docked together successfully, allowing the astronauts and cosmonauts to come together to produce one of the cutest pictures in spaceflight history. And if you ask me, this mission is one of the best examples of what's like an omni-win-win outcome, because not only did both sides then learn a bunch from one another, but it was also a huge win for everyone else on Earth who could now go to sleep a little easier at night knowing that nuclear war was less likely to break out. And frankly, given how many times we came close to nuclear war, who knows, we might not even be able to be here having this conversation, you watching me telling you about this story, had it not been for this little piece of diplomacy. And if you enjoyed this story of two nations finding peace, you'll love my previous Win-Wins of History video about when 198 nations actually agreed upon something. Follow me for more stories of win-wins.